through the Zoom update. So that maybe we might be keeping a couple people.
I didn't have one when I signed on today. I don't know. Maybe I caught it at a different time, but
Oh, if you'd been at another city meeting, maybe you didn't. Yeah, maybe you
it's been
already
a
did.
little bit of a while.
We have to at least wait for Aiden. Okay, I see it's 5 o'clock and 1, 2, 3, 4. Looks like we have a quorum. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So Aiden, I think we'll go ahead. We'll call the Transportation Commission meeting for February 8th, 2023 to order. Stefan, if you please read the instructions.
Absolutely. Welcome to our virtual meeting. If you lose connection at any point during the meeting, you can reconnect by clicking the link or calling the number in your original email. Members of the commission, if you're able, please activate your video and keep it on for the duration of the meeting. Staff, if you're able, please activate your video when you're speaking. In this meeting, panelists have the ability to mute and unmute themselves. Please use the raise hand feature when you'd like to be recognized to speak, ask questions, or request a roll call vote. Staff, please use the raise hand feature when you're asked a question. Lowering your hand will take you out of the queue. Members of the public who have registered to speak, the name you entered in Zoom must match the name you entered in registration. You will remain muted until called upon. Staff will tell you when your time is up. After speaking, a member of the body may ask you a question. If you need to share documentation with the commission, please send it to the email listed on today's agenda. Chair Kovich, floor is yours.
Thanks, Stefan. Aiden, if you could call a roll, please.
Sure thing. Alder Miadzi.
Present.
Barbara Harrington McKinney. I don't see yet. Chris McCahill.
Here.
Ann Kovich.
Here.
Denise Jess is excused from tonight. Bill Bremer.
Here.
Robbie Weber is excused tonight. And Patricia Bennett.
Here.
Bridget Brown.
Here.
Harold Kleems did just send me an email saying he was in an update, so he'll be joining shortly. And then Darren Wozniewski.
Present.
Okay, thank you. And since we have 2 people who have indicated they won't be here, both Darren and Harold would be voting members for tonight. Hey, everybody have an opportunity to look at the minutes from the last meeting. We have just a second, we have somebody in the attendees raising a hand. Is that Harold maybe under Madison Bikes? Could you check on that,
Yes,
please?
Yeah.
that is me.
Okay.
Okay.
Sorry.
If
Wrong
you could
account.
Promote you.
Yeah, that would be great. Thank you. I noticed the hand up there and just wondered, Chris, is that a motion on the minutes, I assume?
Yep.
And Alder Miadzi, is that a second?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So we have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Okay, seeing no hands, we'll assume a unanimous consent vote unless anybody wishes to object or abstain. If so, please raise your hand. Okay, seeing no hands, the motion is carried. Do we have any public comment for items not on the agenda tonight, Aiden?
We do not. We have some for item 2, but none for item 1.
Okay. All right, how about any disclosures or recusals this evening? Okay, seeing none. Why don't we jump right into item number 2? This is Davies and Dempsey. So who is here tonight for that?
That would be me.
Okay, hi, Aaron.
Hello, everyone. I will go ahead and share my screen. All right. Can you confirm you see my
Yes,
screen all right? All right.
we do.
Hello, everyone. My name is Aaron Canton. I'm a designer with the Streets and Paths section in engineering. And today I am looking for your review and feedback for the Davie Street Dempsey Road reconstruction project that City Engineering has planned for this summer, 2023. So the project is on the east side of town. So you can see here the project limits on Davie Street from Buckeye Road to Maher Ave, and then Dempsey from picking up from there from Maher to Cottage Grove Road. This is a rural to urban project. It is a full clean slate. You can see some existing images of Davies and Dempsey here. Existing width, it's between 32 and 36 feet. Pavement's in pretty rough shape and just pavement and grass, no curb and gutter, no sidewalk throughout. And this project has been in the planning mode for a few years now. I think probably about 3 years now. There's been public meetings going back to 2020. We had a kind of some feedback from previous meetings and kind of had a direction forward for a proposed design, which we brought to the public just a couple weeks ago. Had some really good feedback there, and today we're presenting to the commission. So first off, as is now, a common thing for these types of projects is we have the approved complete green streets guidelines to guide some of the decision making for these types of projects. So just a little background on Dempsey Road and Davie Street. It's classified in the CGS guideline as a neighborhood street, meaning a little different than neighborhood yield street because we need two travel lanes where two drivers can pass without needing to stop. This is a transit route. It is today and will continue to be so with the metro redesign. So definitely need to make sure that we accommodate buses well throughout. And then one of the main, or kind of the main overlay from the CGS guidelines that impacts this project is a majority of Davie Street and Dempsey is on the all ages and ability bike network, as a large part of it is on the Monona Lake Loop. So we need to make sure that we have a safe, low stress bike option on this street that ties in well with the rest of the Lake Loop. And otherwise, this stretch does connect some bigger elements. You got Alice Elementary School here off Buckeye, Penny Library off Cottage Grove, so a common thoroughfare through this neighborhood. And getting right into it, this is the proposed cross section that we'll be looking at today. It is, again, this is a rural to urban, so a clean slate. What we're proposing is a 26-foot wide street that is the width of two 11-foot travel lanes, plus the gutter pans, little wider travel lanes here, given that is a transit route. And I'll mention that this also requires removal of all on-street parking on the street. Right now, the street has more or less continuous on-street parking on both sides, except along Lake Edge Park. So that would be removed to fit in all this. So the 26-foot wide street, face-to-face, 5-foot sidewalk, pretty typical on the east side of the street, with a varying terrace width, grass terrace between the sidewalk and street of 4 to 8 feet. And then on the west side, proposing a 10-foot shared use side path for bikes and pedestrians. So giving that all ages and ability bike network and pedestrian facility, and a varying 3 to 5 foot grass terrace between the path and the street here. The grass terrace, as you'll see in the exhibit, it varies quite a bit, and it is it's a tight corridor in terms of grading and tree impacts. We're really trying to kind of squeeze this through with minimizing impacts as much as possible. So trying to maintain a 4 to 5 foot grass terrace as much as possible, but kind of narrowing it where needed to save specific trees or grading issues. And this is kind of just recap of some of those notes. Just for background, some of the previous designs that were looked at in previous years had a wider street with travel lanes and then on-street bike lanes, both just painted bike lanes and buffered bike lanes, and then sidewalk on both sides. These designs had a much wider footprint, so they had a lot more impacts in terms of tree loss and grading impacts, needing retaining walls and such. So this design really allows us to kind of narrow things up and avoid a lot of those impacts. And then the narrower street also accommodates the 2 travel lanes, but helps to create some traffic calming. We'd have a wider street if we had the on-street bike lanes. And given that it is a transit route, some other things like speed humps, traffic circles wouldn't be allowed. So a narrow street works there. And then the side path obviously provides that all ages and ability bike facility on a transit route. And now one part getting into the proposed exhibit. Here is an overview. Buckeye Road here, Cottage Grove here. We'll start on the north side. So this path proposed on the west side of Dempsey would continue the existing off-street path north of Cottage Grove. So reworking a little bit this intersection, mainly on the southern side. So right now there's a diagonal bike crossing with a bike-specific signal here across Cottage Grove. So we're proposing to leave that diagonal crossing and then add a westerly side crossing, follow kind of path to path. Obviously, that would likely be the more common crossing, but keeping that west side crossing does allow you good access to the bike lane on Cottage Grove, and it doesn't really impact the overall delay or it all be in the same phase. So keeping that, painting both those 2 crossings with green paint, as well as redoing all 4 legs with continental crosswalk markings. And then continuing south along Dempsey, here a little bit of a wider street section, maintaining the existing left turn lane of northbound Dempsey onto Cottage Grove, 2 travel lanes. And then this is a bus stop and will continue to be so, and it's a time stop bus stop. So we need room here for buses to pull over, wait along the curb line to kind of sync up with their route, and for buses to be able to sit and wait while traffic can continue. So it's kind of tight here, sort of maximizing the right of way. But this works to provide all the lanes needed, path on the west side, sidewalk here, redoing a little bit and kind of bumping that existing curb line out. And then continuing south, kind of get into our regular narrowed cross section, 26 face to face, path on west side, sidewalk on the east side, bending the sidewalk around existing trees to avoid those impacts. Here, a lot of street crossings with unimproved streets, so setting those up. Some of the future streets here are have future projects planned. So kind of going with sort of setting them up for a standard 26 face-to-face width, but those projects, when Davidson is reconstructed here, would be a decision to be made then. So at all the street crossings along the path, we would have green paint. And then as we continue south, here's Lake Edge Park, a pretty nice big park in the neighborhood. Park court here, where I'm proposing doing a pretty much keeping the path continuous through here and creating a driveway opening into park court. And then in this area of the park, there's some pretty large mature oak trees and some steep grading, some small retaining walls here. So we're really kind of keeping things towards the east here, kind of aligning with that existing edge of pavement to avoid impacts to the trees or walls there. And then as we continue south, kind of shifting over to the other side, shifting everything to the west, a little bit of an alignment curve there through Gary Street. This is because there's some steep grading on this side of the street, some existing walls there as well. and then softer grading on the park side. Here at Gary, some a little bit wider than usual ramps to allow for easier access for bikes, get onto the path, on and off to the path from Gary Street. The park Lake Edge Park sign and ornamental crabapple would have to be removed and relocated here for the path. It's in the right of way currently. Already discussed with Parks about that. Again, the sidewalk here is kind of following that existing edge of pavement. Some steep grading here. Potential wall replacement or reconstruction at one of these homes. And then as we continue south, we everything gets a bit more centered in the right of way as we get to this pretty funky 5-way intersection, which today is a kind of a sea of pavement. Maher Ave, you can see, just continues through. So we're proposing pretty big geometry change here. This north leg of Maher, proposing to really kind of tighten that up and push it to the north so that it comes in at a perpendicular angle into Dempsey Road. A lot different than it does today. You can see that existing stop bar. And so that northern leg of Maher would line up pretty much as a 4-way intersection with Pinchot Ave, be slightly offset. But that would really improve visibility for all cars, really cause that side street traffic to slow down. Does require removing some existing utility poles and kind of reworking this terrace space, sort of cutting back here and then widening out here. So quite a bit more terrace space added to these south side lots. This driveway would be extended out into Maher Ave. Again, coming in at a more perpendicular angle to that curb line. Path would cross here. And then the southern leg of Maher, also kind of reworking that, is a more typical T intersection. A little bit of a funky angle, just kind of the nature of it, but definitely improved from what it is today to help that visibility there. And then this section, given the bend here, and it is a transit route, a little bit wider street to make sure that larger buses are accommodated through there. And then some wider curb cuts as well at Maher Ave on the southern side here for bikes to get on and off the path from Maher. Right. And then continuing on Davie Street, continuing that 26 face-to-face street width, 10-foot path on the west side, sidewalk on the east side. Sidewalk kind of bends around existing trees and grading here. And then more street crossings here at Drexel Ave. Again, green paint at the street, at the path crossing. And then continuing here at Major Ave. So this is where the Lake Loop route bends off of Davie Street and goes up Major. So for this intersection, proposing a little something different, mainly adding marking and signage to very obviously show that it is the Lake Loop route. I think it's kind of confusing today because all those intersections look pretty much the same. So here we have go to a proposed marking plan for the Major Davies intersection, proposing a smaller bike box so that bikers coming on the path southbound would be able to kind of turn up, square up with Davies Street, look both ways at traffic on Davies before crossing to go up Major to continue on the Lake Loop route. A little pretty small bump out and offset in the path here to make more room for the bike box there. And then green skip markings across Davies. And I'll mention in general, the whole route will be marked and signed a Lake Loop route. But this intersection, given it's the turnoff, would have a little more. And then continuing on towards Buckeye, one more street crossing here at Heg Ave. The path does continue all the way to Buckeye, and it just makes sense to bring it all the way. We'll want to make sure that there would at least be sidewalk there, and would be too hard to transition to kind of like bike lanes and sidewalk at this point. And this really does help keep things a lot narrower and avoid tree impacts on both sides. So then as we get to Buckeye here, path bends a little bit around a mature oak here in order to save that. And then a new path ramp opening onto Buckeye Road, elementary school here. And then adding in a new ramp opening on the other side of Buckeye to line up with the path. I think definitely looking for feedback, but we were thinking of keeping this existing Continental crossing and then adding this path crossing here, marking with green paint, so people would have the option. Could see a lot of kids biking to the school, taking the path and then just continuing on that path crossing, opening here onto the sidewalk to access the school. And then also making sure that there's some sort of green skip crossing to make getting from the Buckeye on-street bike lanes onto the path, on and off the path work. And then remarking all 3 legs of this intersection with Continental crosswalk markings. And again, this design involves removing all on-street parking along this whole stretch of Davies and Dempsey. And there are some tree removals still. It is a pretty wooded area today, but quite a bit less than some of the previous designs. And I think that pretty much sums up the presentation.
Okay, thanks, Aaron. I understand, Aiden, that we have some public comments, so we'll go to that before we go to comments and questions from the commission and alders.
All right. So our first registrant is Nicholas Davies of Richard Street, Madison, Wisconsin, and registered in support and wishes to speak.
Yeah, thanks for giving me the opportunity to speak. I'm a resident of Eastmoreland. I was at the 2022 neighborhood meeting about this, and yeah, one of the themes there was that, like, even if you were just to repave the street as is, smoother conditions would make it more appealing to cut through traffic and higher speeds. And nobody at that meeting wanted to see that happen. And kind of looking at the previous design where you had 2 automobile lanes flanked by painted bike lanes in one version, and with additional kind of painted buffering in another, there was the concern that, even if the travel lanes themselves were narrow, there'd be nothing to physically stop drivers from crossing those painted lines into the buffer or into the bike lane itself. And in effect, the road would feel much wider and encourage higher speeds. And, it would end up kind of making the bike route less hospitable to the kinds of beginning cyclists, young or not so young, who tend to make use of the lake loop. And, coming out of that meeting, city staff really listened to our input and rose to the challenge. And I think the updated design addresses those problems very thoroughly. And, the off-street path is certainly a treatment befitting the Lake Loop's status as one of our area's premier routes for biking and jogging and all of those other activities. And it'll also help kids in the neighborhood get to school, get to the library, get to the park. And I appreciate the reduced impact on trees. So yeah, lots of thanks to the staff time that has gone into this, and I like where it's headed. Thanks.
Thank you. Does anybody have a question for the registrant? Okay, I'm seeing no hands. Who else do we have, Aiden?
Right. Next is Catherine Weir of Davie Street, Madison, Wisconsin. Opposes and wishes to speak.
Hello. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. And I just wanted to also say thank you to the city staff who have, I know, spent a lot of time around this design. I wanted to just first say that I share the same goal as city staff and others who I've heard at the meetings of making this a safer location, like a safer street for cyclists and pedestrians. So for reference, I live on the corner of Davies and Major Street on the westerly side of Davies. So where Aaron was showing like the turn onto the bike loop, onto the lake loop from Davies onto Major, that's like exactly where our house is, on that corner. We've lived here for a little over 2 years now. So I have seen a lot of bikers and cyclists and have like really seen how this path functions, or how the area functions, I should say. So my concern is that I just have not seen or heard information to back up that a shared use path is the safest option for cyclists on this street. I utilize the paths with throughout the city with my own family. I have 2 young children. So I understand that paths can often be the safest option. However, here, the path will be in the place where a sidewalk would typically be. And my concern is driveways, including my own and others on Davies and Dempsey, the cars backing out where bikes will be. Many of these driveways are not very long. So it is like very, very close to where a cyclist would be on the path. So if there's a close call, you do not have much time to register that. I am concerned that there's like our house specifically, there is a hill. So if there are cyclists going at an increased speed because of the hill, that there will not be, again, like the safety in place, that which is what we are all looking for here. In communication with city staff, both through emails and at the public meeting at the end of January, city staff have said that they actually they do expect that cyclists will still continue to use the road. Seeing the Lake Loop, there are many cyclists who are riding in large groups, and there are many cyclists who really ride pretty quickly. So they expect some of these cyclists to still use the street. So the concern then is that the street is not going to be safe for those cyclists who are choosing to use the street instead of the shared use path. The street will be more narrow. There will not be enough room for a vehicle to pass a bike without going into the other lane. And also just thinking of those of us where our driveways are like needing to back out onto Davies or Dempsey, that if we are needing to look at like 3 different places to look for bikes, that is just not going to actually increase the safety, which again is I know what we are all trying to do here. I think that's all I wanted to share. So again, I do appreciate the efforts that have been put in. And I do not believe that a shared use path in this specific location is what would be best. I shared at the public meeting as well that I would like to see the bike lanes on the street on each side of the street as had been proposed in 2022. We did not see the shared use path plan until this year. So that's all. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Does anyone have questions for the registrant? Okay, seeing no hands. Who else do we have, Aiden?
So that was the last registrant wishing to speak, but the other registrants are Kelly Debink of Schofield Street, Monona, supports and is available for questions, but does not wish to speak. Kyle Hansen of Helena Street, Madison, Wisconsin, supports and does not wish to speak. Kevin Lueck of North Ingersoll Street, Madison, Wisconsin, supports and does not wish to speak. Connor McCullough, Fisher Street, Madison, Wisconsin, supports and does not wish to speak. Nick Rampa, Harding Street, Madison, supports, does not wish to speak. And lastly, Connor Stone of Thorpe Street, Madison, Wisconsin, supports and wishes to speak.
And wishes to speak, did you say?
Oh, sorry, it does not wish to speak.
Okay, just checking. Thanks. Okay, thank you. So comments or questions for Aaron or I saw Renee on here as well and Yang, and I think we also have a couple other staff. Darren, go ahead.
Thank you. No, thank you for this presentation. And I really appreciated when I first saw it, I was like, oh, now I have to dig out the Complete Green Streets Guide and see how it connects. So I really appreciated the report that tied it all together and saved me a whole lot of time in looking at that. I do have a question about all of the street crossings on the shared youth path, seeing how this connects a library, a park, a school. Has there been any consideration to prioritizing that path as it crosses those streets through raised crossings there? to give a little bit, if it's going to be that wide, just to let people know, hey, something is going on, and then also the lake loop thing. So that is just my question as it goes along that shared use path.
Yep. Definitely. So doing raised crossings, kind of like a little more like what was showed at Park Court. Though that is a little bit different street. So definitely something that we've heard feedback on and have discussed some. They're just always tricky to put in. It involves more storm sewer, more concrete, and more cost. So something that's difficult to do everywhere. Some of the intersections are also pretty tight. Like when you have this kind of side path crossing, ideally to fit it in and make it not look really weird, you'd want that path to be offset a bit onto that side street, and there's not a ton of room to do that given the right of way here. But I think it's something we can definitely look to do more and look at some other potential crossings where it could work. I think Maher, this leg is one where it might be a little more feasible, though you do have kind of a tight closeness with that driveway here. But yeah, it's an added cost and has difficult to make the grading work, involves a lot more storm sewer usually. But if the commission wants us to take a closer look at where it could be fit in, I think we definitely could.
Yeah, I mean, I appreciate the added cost. I just think of library, school, park, lake loop. They're all the things we're trying to do in all ages and all abilities, bike path there, that it's something that really, I understand, trying to stretch dollars, but these are probably little kids' lives that are crossing there. So I just kind of look at that a little strongly.
Okay, so perhaps look at that where feasible, or we can hear other thoughts from other commissioners as well. Is that all you had then, Darren?
It is. Thank you. And
Okay.
Thanks, Aaron.
Harold, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks, Aaron, for presenting this. I mean, this overall looks really good to me. It will be a great improvement to the current very bumpy pavement, no sidewalks, giant puddles, ice in the winter. So I'm really looking forward to this actually happening. And I think the design makes a lot of sense. I think I'm in agreement with Darren. Continuous pathway would be good. I don't think it's absolutely crucial here because the cross streets, if I'm not mistaken, are mostly stop controlled and also not super high volume. Like some of them don't go through all the way. So there's probably not a ton of turning movements and all of that, but still, since it is such an important bike connection, I think defaulting to the continuous path whenever possible would be good. So I think it would be good if you could investigate that more. Couple questions. So with the lake loop routing, I don't actually, as you said, it's kind of awkward right now. All the intersections look the same. The routing itself, I'm not totally sure why it goes the way it goes right now, like why it makes that left turn where it does, where other possible routings would be possible. So I was wondering if there is any reason why it goes on, what is it, major right now, I think?
Yeah, it does right now go on major. And a lot of it is just the history of the route. I don't know who originally decided that, but obviously whenever there's a little change to the route, and there has been, it is definitely hard. People want to kind of continue on that same route. And apparently maybe some other people know the history of the major turn.
Okay, we have Tom Lynch and then Grant Foster. So go ahead, Tom.
Yeah, so the city of Monona doesn't allow cyclists on their sidewalks. And so there's a section of Monona where we have to leave the sidewalk basically and find a detour around that portion. And so it's just kind of the way it is. There was an idea to try and continue it perhaps about 2 years ago, and that kind of failed. So right now the lake loop is kind of what it is. So.
Okay, thanks, Tom. Alder Foster, go ahead.
Yeah, just specifically in terms of getting between kind of Davies and Lakeview, sort of assuming that the generally that the Lake Loop is going to be going through this area. There's really only 3 possible streets: Maher, Drexel, and Major. Maher, going southeast from here, actually has quite a bit more motor vehicle volume because it ends up being sort of a cut through for folks that are heading kind of eastbound on Buckeye. So, and it's all of these are very sort of steep hills, but Major is about the most gradual route you can take of all of them. So my assumption is that's why it was established in the beginning. And I've tried all the different routes, and I don't think there's anything that beats Major, and it's otherwise very low volume street. So I don't think there's really any advantage to picking a different one at this point.
Okay, thanks for the history there. Harold, other comments?
Yeah, no, I think that's helpful because, yeah, I mean, if there had not been a good reason, then I would have suggested, like, yeah, just assessing, like, let's pick where it makes most sense in terms of the intersection. And especially with now the reconfigured, like, I mean, Maher maybe sees somewhat fewer parts now with, like, where you can't go straight through anymore. But yeah, I think this is all fine. I think for that intersection of Major to facilitate that turn, I think looking very closely at the geometry there and making sure that, you know, when you turn right from Major onto, what is that, northbound Davis, like, you know, making sure that people can make that turn without getting into, because the path is only 10 feet wide, without going too far into the other side and possibly having conflicts with oncoming cyclists. So just looking at that closely is good. But I like the markings. I like the bike box. Could you go to the intersection with Cottage Grove? Okay. So you explained us with the bus pullout, or the bus needs to be parked there, and you have the left, like, do we need that left turn lane at that intersection? And maybe tying into that, I'm thinking about the signal phasing here, because as you said, there's the diagonal crossing, which I think is its own phase. And then if you have left turns onto Cottage Grove, is that going to be a protected left? Is that the advantage of having a dedicated left turn lane? Because yeah, I think with the buses there, like, yeah, you need a pretty wide right away, and I want to make sure that all works well.
I wonder if maybe traffic engineering person could chime in about the need for the left turn lane and how the signal phasing. I know Jerry Shippo is kind of guiding on this, and he is not here tonight. He's at board.
Is Jeremy Nash or Yang? Could either of you help?
Yeah, I'm happy to speak up about that. This is Jeremy Nash. So last time I talked to Jerry, I believe this is entire, the bike crossing was its own phase in the signal. So it was kind of everything stops and then the bike signal goes. And so his intention was to keep the diagonal crossing and the north-south crossing kind of in its own phase. I don't know if I can speak to removing that left turn lane, but I know Jerry kind of planned with the signal phasing that way.
Okay, yeah, I mean, I think overall this is probably just fine. I wonder in terms of where the signal heads go for that crossing, if there would be some, yeah, never mind. I think, you know, looking at the need for the left turn, if we don't need it, I think it would be better to have like a dedicated bus pull out, because I guess when the bus is parked there, then people have to go into that left turn lane to get around the bus, right? So that seems slightly awkward to me.
Everything is, it's a little weird with the aerial in the background, but everything is shifted over. So we kind of looked at, you know, through 2 through lanes, left turn lane and bus pull out all separately, so that bus could be pulled curbside and be out of the way. I mean, there would be a little spillover, I think, naturally, but it would largely be out of the way, in that southbound traffic wouldn't get into that left turn lane.
Okay, all right, thanks. That's helpful then, which I guess probably makes for a longer pedestrian crossing, but also probably not largely so, because as you said, most things are just shifted. Okay. All right. I think that's all I have. As I said, overall, this looks really good to me. Thanks.
Thanks, Harold. Alder Foster, go ahead.
Thanks, Chair. I just wanted to give kind of general comments as Alder for the district. As you heard from staff, this project's been in the works for several years. Had 3 PIMs with a lot of evolution of design. This is really one of the trickier streets that I've been involved with to try and figure out, because of that need for the bus, because of the lake loop, and then really a constrained right of way. I mean, it was mentioned briefly, but it really does make a lot of challenges here. And so all the other iterations of this that had on-street bike lanes really ended up with a really wide footprint, had more tree loss, had narrower terraces. And so it's sort of one of those awesome things where you can get better pedestrian and bike facility with that path, and actually end up with a little bit more room to work with. So it ended up, I think, really improving the design, and there's just been a lot of thoughtful elements and additions in here. So I just feel really excited about it. I think it's going to be a great project. I appreciate the work that's been done around the pavement markings with that major intersection. I think that's an improvement as well. And I would just also add my support, as you know, you staff heard at the public meeting, there was asking about continuous path as well. And I think in terms of sort of city policy around it, I think when you have a side path is probably a good starting point for when you'd want to have this as a standard. I don't think we necessarily have to consider that, you know, every street crossing on every project going forward. But I think when you've got that side path, it's a pretty reasonable starting point. So I would also be very supportive of getting as many of those intersections raised to prioritize the path crossing as well. So thank you all, and encourage everybody to support this.
Thanks, Alder. Other comments or questions? Looks like a lot of work has gone into this over an extensive period of time. Other comments or questions? You've heard, Aaron, you've heard a lot of feedback, mostly about raised crossings, it sounds like, which it sounds like you'll try and accomplish where you can, but it may not be feasible in every instance. Would that be correct?
Yep, that's correct.
Other comments? Last call. Other comments? Okay, thanks very much. Did you have any other comments or questions, Aaron, on anything you heard?
I would just say, I think that.
Whoops, Alder Harrington, looks like we have a raised hand. Alder Harrington McKinney, go ahead.
Thank you very much. I was trying to find the raised hand. One of the speakers commented on the public engagement, and could you just kind of describe that, and so I could, where that was held, and it sounded like it was well intended and it gave a lot of information to the community. Could you just say a little bit about that, how that looked?
Sure. So yeah, like it's been discussed, this project has been in the planning stages for a few years now. So before I was the PM on it, there was another designer. There was 2 PIMs, I think one in December 2020 and then one in January 2022, just like a year later. And then kind of hearing that feedback, project ended up getting pushed to 23 to this year. And we kind of took in the feedback with this proposed design with the side path. And we hosted a public meeting just a couple weeks ago at the end of January. And it was a virtual public meeting, as were the ones before it. It was in the evening. Sent out a pretty large postcard mailing to the people on the street and the surrounding area. Sent out to some of the Bike Madison groups. We had I think about 60 people at the public meeting and about an hour and a half of Q&A. So really quite a lot of engagement, and definitely one that people had already been pretty aware of. So I'd say all in all, really good engagement. And then we also had a project survey with a bit more general questions and comments from folks. That survey actually, I think, ends today. So looking forward to hearing more responses from folks on that.
Excellent. That sounds very good. And where was that public meeting? It was virtual, so
It was virtual, yep.
Okay, okay. Thank you so very much. I like to hear that.
And I'll just add, since Aaron joined the project at the end, but I was at the other ones, they were all well attended. We did do a survey at the first meeting as well. So I feel like we have captured a lot of input, and a lot of the ideas that you see tonight actually came out of meetings that we had. So I think it was really quite a good process for this one.
Okay, sounds like a great example of good community input and good result as everybody listened well. Any other comments or questions? Okay, thanks very much, Aaron and Renee and everybody else who joined as well. Okay, so let's move on to item number 3, the Transportation Annual Report. That would be Tom Lynch. And this is one of those unusual situations where we have something that's required by the ordinance, by the Department of Transportation ordinance, to go to both the Transportation Policy and Planning Board and the Transportation Commission. So Tom was at the Transportation Policy and Planning Board on Monday and is here at TC this evening. So go ahead, Tom, and welcome. Thanks.
Yeah. Hold on for just a second. Thank you. I'm in my kitchen, and I'm in my kitchen, and things were about to happen in my kitchen. So I thought I'd postpone them for just a little bit. So I didn't actually realize that I was supposed to do this report until about a year into my job, but it's actually become one of my more fun things to do. I typically do it over the Christmas period, and it's kind of a reflection on what has occurred and also where our transportation is going. I like to start the report with the trends. This is our 2 graphs that show our traffic volume trends in Madison. To the left, it shows Atwood Avenue, which is right now we're at 91% of 2019 volumes. So we have not necessarily fully recovered. And then on Park Street, I think it shows what, 94%? Yeah, 94% of pre-pandemic volumes. Similarly, on East Washington, generally we're finding that streets that are serving our downtown are showing a little bit less traffic volume recovery. Here you can see East Washington volumes as throughout the day, and you can see that the peaks, the gray is 2019 and the green is 2022. So the peaks on East Washington are still a third less than what they were in 2019. So one might argue that in 2019 they were a little bit too high because we did experience a fair amount of congestion. But right now, we're kind of moving into a new normal, and so our new normal might mean that we have more dispersed peaks, and that we might be able to feel better about reallocating street space and right of way to other uses. That isn't the case, though, throughout the region. Generally, the state roads and the peripheral roads are experiencing higher traffic volumes. Here you can see the Beltline. Right now, the Beltline is 103% of the pre-pandemic volumes. To the right is kind of an illustration of what occurred with the addition of the flex lane on the Beltline. And so you can see that the flex lane was implemented in July, and then in August, you could see an additional 1,000 to 1,500 vehicles per day during the peak hour. Just during the morning peak hour, we're traveling on the Beltline. So, the adage that if you build a facility, they will come, and that's kind of what occurred on the Beltline there. Also, if we look at things nationally, this is from the Federal Reserve. I think it's in St. Louis, Missouri. It collects this particular data. They do the national VMT per month, and in September, nationally, we were at 104% of the 2019 volumes. And so there you can see that, nationally, the vehicle miles traveled is above where we were pandemic. However, the Madison VMT is not that way. Now this is comparing 2021 volumes with 2019 volumes, because the 2022 volumes are not quite ready. But the Madison area MPO, we asked them if they would be willing to use Streetlight to monitor our VMT. And so they developed and researched a methodology that does that for us. And here you can see the graphs. We have a 14% decrease in all weekday traffic, and then a 20% decrease in weekday traffic excluding external to external trips. So an external to external trip is a trip that, for instance, is on the interstate, it enters Madison and it leaves on the interstate. So that's actually very good. That's when I saw this data about 2 weeks ago, I was just surprised at how good it was. The question is, will 2022 be the same way? And we don't know, but they did do some spot checks on, the MPO did do some spot checks in some months for 2022, and they seem to indicate that trend is continuing. Our bicycle trips, just as our downtown trips, motor vehicle trips are decreasing. Our bicycle trips also are decreasing. This is the kind of the monthly bicycle traffic on the Southwest Path and also the Capital City Trail, and we're down about 11 to 14%. Our fatal crash trends, which I like to use caution, right? Because the sample size is quite low, right? And you want to have statistically significant, results and not make too much out of a high year or make too much out of a low year. However, 2022 is much lower than 2020 and 2021, where we have 9 crashes with 9 fatal crashes. So it's trending in the right direction. Again, being cautious about overemphasizing a single year. If we look at Metro Transit, our October passengers, I think we're probably at a point where we're at a new normal, for our transit service, and a new normal for parking and traffic. And so we're about 3/4 of where we were in 2019, and our fare revenue is kind of in a similar place, about 3/4 of where we were in 2019. Now, fare revenue only makes up 1/4 of Metro's operating budget. So it's not like it's a huge drain on the budget, but it's just, something to note. Our October revenue hours were increased slightly from 2021. However, we're still not at the revenue hours that we were in 2018. With kind of the progression of the transit network redesign, we thought it doesn't make sense to add routes that would only be in place for perhaps 9 months. We look at October riders per revenue hour. In 2019, we were at 33 riders per revenue hour. And in 2022, we're back up to 27 riders per revenue hour. That's very good. If you look at the National Transit Database, we are easily within the top 5% as far as efficiency, as far as riders per revenue hour. So while we are still less than 2019, this is a very good statistic that probably the majority of transit agencies in the U.S. would like to have. Now we move to the parking division. This is the average September occupancy from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. We have different types of metrics, but I chose to choose this one. I also chose not to show the 2020 and 21. I just thought, well, let's just compare it to how things are before the pandemic and now, right? And so you can see a garage close to campus, SSCA, that's the campus garage. We're pretty much at normal there, but most of the garages that are tied to the downtown employment, such as Overture, State Street Capitol North, and Wilson, are less. And they're not so much less during the weekends, but they're mostly less during the week, right? And so that kind of illustrates the new normal. I think many employers, particularly in downtown, are allowing their employees to work from home or to work 3 days out of 5. And so the impetus to get monthly permits is down a bit. So we need to recognize this trend, realize that this is perhaps what the new normal is, and then figure ways to try and better utilize our parking facilities while still decreasing VMT, right? So it's kind of a yin yang. We want to maximize our asset and the revenue from that asset, but also not increase motor vehicle use. On the left, here's our parking division and the 2022 garage revenue. Right there, it looks like the State Street campus has an outsized influence, but the State Street campus garage is really 2 garages of a little bit more than 1,000 spaces, and so it functions as one unit, but it has twice as many spaces as the other garages, so that's why it looks that way. But you can see how much we're receiving hourly versus long-term lease. And you can see on the graph on the right that we're really reliant on our parking, our garage revenue to keep things going. The garages provide the greatest contribution to the budget. Lot parking, less so, and then on-street parking, a little bit more so. In the past, the parking division has been able to generate perhaps a surplus of anywhere from $6 to $10 million because of just various events and the like. Now they do generate a surplus, but it's relatively small, and so we would like to probably better use our assets so that we can contribute to other things. Now I'm going to move into accomplishments, and I feel like this year has really been a culmination of 3 or 4 years of hard work by the Transportation Policy Board as well as the Transportation Commission. If we look at the Transportation Department, which is just myself and then a couple of staff that work directly with me, is the Transportation Demand Management Ordinance was enacted. And so we've had transportation demand management on our ordinance books for probably almost a decade, and yet there hasn't been a single methodological consistent place to figure out what needs to occur. This was a major lift. I'm going to just credit Philip Grinsmacher. He did most of the heavy lifting on this, and this is something to be proud of. Also in transportation, we have been working with engineering to develop a methodology to program projects that relies on more than just pavement condition. The methodology includes, a high entry network, the ability to add pedestrian bicycle facilities, kind of the condition of utilities underneath the street, such as water and sewer. And so kind of a scoring system was used, and it's kind of illustrated by this graphic. The reds are showing streets with high need and the greens are showing streets with lower need. And then in the purple and the gray are the outlines of the 23 and the 24 program projects. This methodology will be used in the projects that you see for the tip for the next current year, and it provides just a better way to evaluate our reconstruction needs more holistically. Transportation, we started the Amtrak location study. What we thought would be a public meeting with maybe 50 people. In fact, I remember telling the setup crew to just put out 20 chairs because we don't want to look foolish if not many people come. And lo and behold, probably the in-person had between 100 and 200 people attending. Here you can see the Amtrak meeting before, probably 10 or 15 minutes before it even got started. We had 700 people that wanted to join the online version just after the in-person. So it was a huge success. It also showed that we really need to treat this as a big deal and have better staffing and better IT support when we do the future things. If we look to traffic engineering, the Vision Zero Action Plan, that was a big deal. That was passed in March. And then this was the first year of Safe Streets Madison, which was a big deal for the Transportation Commission because you had to go through that and approve all those projects. Traffic engineering, complete green streets. This is really going to change the way we design streets for decades. This is in the ordinance, and an illustration of how this is going to work is what you just saw prior to this agenda item. I think ours is perhaps the most complicated that I've seen in the country, but also is kind of neat because it includes land use context in the typology. And so it's not just, well, do you include bike facilities or pedestrian facilities, but it also acknowledges that there's a context, there's a land use context, and how does that street fit into that? Metro Transit, the East-West BRT, the environmental document was approved. There was 2 bid packages. I think one of the bid packages had 14,000 plan sheets, or 1,400 plan sheet pages. I mean, that's just huge lift. Our consultants did a lot of work, and then we did a lot of work coordinating with them. The bidding of the early works in the main bid package, and then a bus order for 46 buses. And then we had the groundbreaking work some of you were involved with. The Metro Transit network redesign. This occurs just once every 25 years. It's really hard to do. I remember in 1998 when the last time this occurred. And this was a huge lift, a lot of work. And it will be interesting to see because June 10th, you will ride one bus, and then June 11th, you'll be riding a totally different bus, right? And so I remember reading about how Houston changed all the bus routes overnight, and lo and behold, we're going to be doing that too, June 11th. That all occurred on the front burner, but then there's a lot of things that occurred on the back burner. There was over $20 million worth of improvements to Metro's facility. And so here you can see on the right, the maintenance space that we redone. On the left, you could see some employee areas and the driver areas. And this is like remodeling your kitchen while you're still living there. You still have to cook your meals, right? But everything's a mess. And this is what Metro Transit did over the past year. Parking division, the State Street campus redevelopment, which includes a Lake Street. So this includes a reconstruction of one of our older garages that's 60 years old, but it hopefully will also include an intercity bus terminal. And so we're excited about that. The zoning was approved, as was the developer contract. So we hope this is able to move forward. Then the parking division, that was also somewhat in the background, but it was still important. We had a lot of the PEO vehicles were stored in police facilities downtown in the Fairchild lot. All of those were relocated, I'm going to say relatively rapidly, to the Wilson Street garage. So they just changed their operations, as well as the downtown PEOs changed kind of their base of operations. And then we've also been getting ourselves ready for the future interim home. The town of Madison has been transferred to this, facilities have been transferred to the city of Madison. We hope to house our PEOs, all of the PEOs in the districts there, and Stephanie, who is on this, I think, meeting, believes that we'll be able to move late March or maybe early April. So that's an exciting thing.
Tom, do you want to mention Stephanie's new role as well?
Yeah, I didn't think I was supposed to staff this meeting, but I saw that she's co-host. So, Stephanie Cox, why don't maybe you could turn on your camera? I don't know if you, is she?
There she is.
Is she there? Okay,
Yep, there she is. Yep.
I'm gonna stop sharing so that Stephanie can. So we're excited. Stephanie has been working with the PEOs for over a decade, maybe 15 to 20 years. Was recently with traffic engineering, and she'll be our new parking manager. So I think she's back from vacation, has started for about maybe a week, and look forward to seeing all the things she's going to do. She brings a lot of energy. And so some of us are, if any of us are tired, I'm kind of tired, well, she's going to come in and just keep that energy going. So I'll continue sharing. Let me see.
Just a second, Alder Harrington McKinney has her hand up. Go ahead, Alder.
And I apologize because I'm on my cell phone. I didn't want to miss this meeting. And did Stephanie turn her camera on? I was curious as to if she did or not.
Yes, she did.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Yep. We're all looking at her and waving at her and saying congratulations and welcome. And we look forward to seeing her at Transportation Commission.
Yep. So here's kind of a highlight of some of the Transportation Department initiatives, the Amtrak station, the Complete Green Streets, the Transportation Demand Management, Inner City Bus Terminal, East-West BRT. That should say the Transit Network redesign, and then the Vision Zero. And I'm just going to say that this is an enormous amount of accomplishment. This is like a lot. And I'm going to say that probably most cities would be happy with 2 of these things occurring. And yet, through the board and then this commission, all of this occurred. It was just, I just think it's a big deal. I mean, I think of all the long nights, the Transit Network redesign public hearing, do you remember that? And all these things, and so I'm going to say our staff worked really hard and did a really good job. And I'm going to just say that the board and the commission should really feel proud. I feel like what was accomplished this year is just really amazing. So, and that's kind of it.
Yeah, I know a lot of accomplishments all sort of culminated at the end of 2022. And kudos to staff and the board and the commission as well. So comments or questions for Tom? Alder Miazzi, go ahead.
Well, first, I just want to congratulate you and your staff on amazing work that you guys have done. Definitely. But I just had a couple of questions. Well, one was we talked about at the beginning how there was traffic on East Wash, but also too that has gone down. But the traffic on the Beltline due to the extra lane added. Do you think that might be because people are diverting toward the Beltline? You talked about going down certain streets, being diverted down certain streets to alleviate traffic.
Yeah, I actually there is some diversion, but I don't think it's necessarily relieving East Washington. Modeling's kind of a strange thing. For instance, we actually modeled what it would take to reduce John Nolan Drive to 1 lane in each direction. And we thought 10,000 cars leave John Nolan Drive if we do that. And we thought, well, it's all going to Park Street, right? Because that's what you would think, right? Well, no, actually only 500 cars go to Park Street. So it goes in like 150 different directions. And so I don't think that the increase in volumes on the Beltline are pulling traffic directly from East Washington, but I do feel like there's 150 different choices that people are making all around that are eventually just adding about 1,500 vehicles to the Beltline.
Okay, another question I had is that there was a fatality. I'm not sure if it was due to the accident, but on CV and over on Packers. I just wanted to pick your mind. I know that CV belongs to, I think, Dane County, more or less Madison. Is there any way to partner with Dane County and to ensure, I don't know if we got anything in the making as far as to make sure that road is so bad as far as probably repavement or to address congestion, especially in the morning?
Yeah, I don't know. I do know that Packers Avenue will be part of the North-South BRT, and we are soliciting proposals now for the North-South BRT. And so one of the changes that will likely be paying special attention to will be that intersection with, it's kind of Packers and Northport. How it kind of it's kind of a strange intersection right there. We'll be looking at that and probably looking to see if we can make it more of an urban intersection rather than a free-flowing intersection that's, I'm going to say, oriented towards motor vehicles. And so that will probably be one of the things that the BRT project looks at.
Okay, it'd be nice to hear more about it, but also too, further down the road than Packers and Northport, but closer to CV. I wanted to know if there was a possibility probably to see if we can possibly partner with Dane County to ensure that road, I know it's very hectic in the morning, to make sure that we address that, especially since there was a fatality there. It is kind of congested, especially in the morning.
We can look at some, oftentimes, we can interact with the county. They tend to have certain conditions and requirements that we can interact with.
Okay, we can discuss about that offline, but I would like to try to champion that with you.
Okay.
Is that all you had then, Alder?
Yes, thank you, Chair.
Thanks. Darren, go ahead.
Thank you. Tom, again, just reiterate the kudos to you and your staff. I really appreciated seeing that whole picture since I came on board the TC in 2022. So it was good to kind of just get that snapshot of where it goes. And I just had a chuckle when you put that the traffic volume on the Beltline, because I remember when I first met Fred Kent from formerly a Project for Public Spaces about 15 years ago. He pulled me aside and he said, the only thing you have to remember, you add more lanes, you get more traffic. And that was just spelled out there clearly. So, but yeah, that was just congratulations to you and your staff.
Thanks.
Thanks, Darren. Harold, go ahead.
Yeah, same for me, obviously. I mean, lots of work, and it has a lot of these projects have been going on for longer than 2022, but it's so satisfying when they all come together and we actually have them on the books and they change the way we do things. So thank you very much for that. I just wanted to make a process recommendation since, and you mentioned that the report has to be made to TPPB and TC. And I watched the recording of TPPB on Monday, so I got a spoiler alert, I guess, already. I wonder if we could maybe try to put this into a joint meeting so that we don't do this twice in a row in the future.
Yeah, there was a suggestion about that, but I think and Tom, you can weigh in on this, the folks at Transportation Policy and Planning Board decided that we have a lot on the agenda for the joint meeting already. So they said, let's just take it at the regular meetings and do it that way. But you're absolutely right. It's our goal to try and avoid that. And we've done a pretty good job over the past couple of years of trying to avoid that and just watching, if it's at the policy board, we'll, send everybody the link and we can watch the meeting. So great suggestion. And, certainly something that we can look at depending on how things move forward relative to what we'll talk about at the joint meeting.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Other comments or questions? Alderman Yazzie.
Just wanted to add too, it's funny, I was in DC transportation here was Division 0 was recognized also nationally. So it's good when you get recognized locally, but not also nationally too. So that's great. Just want to say that again. Thanks.
Yeah. Well, I just add my kudos as well. Go ahead, Harold.
No, I was just going to ask if we needed a motion to accept the report.
We do. You anticipated my next comment, other than saying thanks so much to everybody. So a motion from Harold. Alderman Yazzie, is that a second? Okay, we have a motion and a second to accept the report. Anybody object to unanimous consent vote or wish to abstain? If so, please raise your hand. Okay, motion is carried. And thanks so much, Tom. And, pass our thanks along to everybody. We all know from watching the meetings, even if they were at the policy board, because we're the implementation body, the Transportation Commission has to watch that. We were a big part of the implementation hearing on the network redesign. We were very involved with the State Street Campus Garage, and we've been involved with Complete Green Streets, and we've already seen, the efforts of that this time and last time as we talked about Complete Green Streets requirements and transportation demand management implementation as well. So kudos to everybody and a lot of great work. And it is really rewarding to be a part of it. And it is really excellent to see the national recognition for what's been accomplished relative to traffic safety in our city. So thanks so much, Tom. Okay. Well, that was a great segue into the next topic, which is agenda topics for the joint TC-TPPB meeting. So part of why I wanted this on there was to make sure you all should have gotten a placeholder invitation, but we have a joint meeting of the Transportation Commission and the Transportation Policy and Planning Board on Monday, March 6th at 5:00. We have a TC meeting scheduled for March 8th. We'll see, depending if we have any council referrals for the 8th, if we can potentially try and avoid having two meetings that week. But we do have two referrals from the Common Council meeting last night to both TC and TPPB. The two Legistar file numbers, and Aidan can certainly send you links now if anybody's interested in looking at them ahead of time. But one is a pretty big topic. It's Legistar file 75901, and it shows a draft of the recreated Transportation Commission ordinance for the potential merging of the Transportation Commission and the Transportation Policy and Planning Board. This was before us at a joint meeting, but it was back in July of 2021. And there it really had sort of been set aside for a while and is being brought back again. Alders Furman and Foster have sponsored that potential shift in the ordinance. So there's a lot. I've been going through it since it was published on Friday with the agenda. So there's a lot of detail. So I'll encourage everybody to pay a lot of attention to that. The other a joint referral was the addition of complete green streets responsibilities to the existing TEC ordinance. So in case we continue down the path of having policy board doing the policy and TC doing the implementation, we would bring that ordinance up to speed. Transportation demand management was already added to it. So they're sort of, they're related, but different paths, if you will. Possible there may be another referral, Chapter 16 subdivision ordinance. I believe that's related to complete green street changes as well, but I haven't seen that referral as well. And there was 4 referrals to the Transportation Policy and Planning Board on that night, but not to the Transportation Commission. So we'll have to work on that agenda. In some of the emails that we've had, I did bring forward the suggestion with regard to inviting somebody from the fire department to come talk to both our bodies about speed humps, potentially other traffic safety solutions like as narrowing streets, et cetera. So we'll certainly look at that as a possibility. I don't know if it'll happen at this meeting, but certainly keep it on, future agenda topics if it's, we don't have the opportunity. But I wanted to give everybody here an opportunity before we have an agenda setting meeting. Is there anything else that you can think of that we would want to have on our topics? One of the things that we'll do is look at status updates on the action items from the last joint meeting. And I'll tell you, just like we saw with Tom Lynch, we've wrapped up a lot of them. So, we can potentially consider moving forward. Alder Harrington McKinney.
Yes, one of the things that, and I don't know if it's planned, but I just want to put it out there and get some feedback, is to look at the both of the boards and see where there is an overlapping, and so for me being new, and I read and thinking that I'm understanding what each responsibility, but I want to make sure that there is no place for overlapping since I serve on both of those committees. And I don't know when the last time the TC has looked at that, or is that something that will be done jointly? So it's really an ask, has that been done recently? And if it were done, is it done individually or is it done as a joint process?
I can say yes, we'll certainly take a look at that, because the proposal in the recreated ordinance brought forward by Alders Foster and Furman is that the bodies would be merged. So there would be only one transportation body. But relative to your comment about avoiding duplication, a couple of years ago, we looked at that very seriously at the same time that the TC was looking at how could we be more efficient, because we have a lot of resolutions, as you all know, referred to the TC. So we looked at consent agendas. We looked at not having just information only presentations. We just wanted action items where we look at review and feedback. So we went through, I worked very closely with staff to try and make our meetings more efficient. And one of the things that we did look at closely, Alder, was there duplication? And we did find a few things that staff, like TIP, was coming to both TC and TPPB. We said, hey, let's just take that to the policy board, and then TC can watch that meeting. And then we also decided to invite members of TC to TPPB and send the agenda out so everybody knows what's coming, and do the same in terms of inviting Transportation Policy and Planning Board members to TC if there are issues on the agenda that they would like to attend. So we did look at that, and I would hope that we've been successful in that regard. So, but this proposal goes even further and says, hey, let's just do away with having two and let's just consider doing one. Again, I encourage everybody to look at that. Would you all like a link to that ordinance? Because Aiden can certainly send that out to everybody. It's in Legistar right now. We have quite a bit of time between now and March 6th. And, it's possible there may even be substitutes or something that comes along. But if anybody's interested, it's Legistar 75901. So you can find it in Legistar, or we could have Aiden. Why don't you just send a link out to everybody? And then if you're interested, you can take a peek and just keep watching it, and we'll see the progress. And you can certainly email me if you do think of any topics, because we're probably not going to, I would say, probably not next week, probably the following week, we'll get together with the Chris and I and the chair and vice chair of the Transportation Policy and Planning Board and staff will get together and look at agendas and talk about it. So if you don't have any other thoughts tonight, just, you can certainly email and let me know if you do come up with something. Okay. Any other comments or questions on that? Please just make sure you keep that night clear, because that's going to be a really important meeting. Okay, item number 5, updates from the crossover members with the policy board. And this is one of the ways that we stay up to date on what's happening on the policy board, because we have to implement any policies that are passed by the policy board. But Chris, you want to go ahead?
There was not much. It was a meeting Monday. We saw Tom Lynch's report there. And the only other thing was Odana area plan, mapping the official roads on the official map, which is sort of a standard practice, so that the city can preserve the right of way when future development happens.
Okay. That was a pretty short meeting, as I recall.
Yes, Tom tried to stretch out his report as long as he could to make us feel a little better.
All right. Any comments or questions for Chris? Alderman Yazzie, go ahead.
That's not really a question. There was something brought up on the agenda, and I tried to get it referred last night at a common council meeting to TC. I don't know. Did you?
I watched it. Yeah, I watched it. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So I just need to, I read off our mission statement, but I wasn't really clear on I guess I should probably look to the mission statement of the planning and policy and planning board. But nevertheless, I guess my question is, how do we get things to come to both parties as when it gets done? I mean, I guess my question is, I didn't know that when that was getting referred there, I wanted to make sure it got referred to us as well, and it said that it didn't have to.
Sure. Yeah, the 4 that were discussed last night were ordinance changes related to biking. And the Transportation Policy and Planning Board specifically has the authority for and is supposed to be reviewing any ordinance changes. I would say where I have seen it come to both is when the policy board, for example, the ordinance change on the Transportation Commission ordinance, clearly the Transportation Commission is going to have some great feedback on that. So that ordinance referral is going to both bodies. Another example that I can think of is the taxi cab ordinance. The TC is involved in the implementation of that, and we deal with the taxi cab operators all the time. So if there are changes proposed to that, the policy board is interested in what the Transportation Commission has to say. So there are times where we have some overlap in that regard, but generally speaking, the Transportation Policy and Planning Board is the one who has that specific responsibility in its charter. and I will say, without going too far afield, that this is partly why some folks believe that we should have one transportation body, because there is some overlap. And, you know, when you have the Transportation Commission who implements all of these things and understands how the implementation works, you know, why don't you have those folks involved in some of these other activities? So, you know, that's why our discussion on the 6th is going to be really interesting and worthwhile, I think.
Yeah, thank you for that explanation. And it's no matter what we do as a city, I believe that community engagement is always important. So as long as we are getting engagement out, no matter what we discuss, is important to me, right? So so yeah, that would be nice if we can actually. There's so many committees, so many. I got to go back and watch so many meetings. So it'd be nice if we could start trying to combine committees, and this would be one that I would love to see combined. Thank you.
Yeah. We'll talk. We can certainly talk about pros and cons, and that's what we'll do at the meeting on the 6th. So, any other comments for Chris? Okay, thanks, Chris. I don't have any announcements tonight. In terms of agenda items for the 22nd, we already know of 3 council referrals. Traffic signal priority list, quarterly traffic safety report. Likely have an update from the appeal subcommittee because that's scheduled 20th of February. So we should have had that, and I can bring that back to you. And any other topics? I did put the fire department topic as a joint topic down there, just so we didn't lose track of it. It's down at the bottom of our potential agenda items. Bridget?
Yeah, and Anne, tell me if I just completely missed this, but a while ago we had talked about just getting an update on the status of, you know, crossing signals within the city, in terms of, you know, some of them seem to be remaining automatic and some aren't. And I'm just wondering if we can, you know, traveling recently to other places across the country where they don't even have buttons. The signals are just automatic, you know, with every cycle. I guess I'd just like to hear from the city about any thoughts they have, their plans for the future. Just a quick update, and it doesn't really matter if it's in writing or at a meeting.
Sure. We have a future topic, update on COVID-related automated recall for pedestrian crossing signals.
Yeah,
so,
it was that. Yep, that's how it started. But it seems it's just, I think it's gone beyond that, in that the automatic signals seem to be kind of the way that a lot of cities are going, you know, at least across the country anyway. So regardless of COVID.
So use of automated recall for pedestrian crossings just generally?
Yeah. As long as that's clear to everyone, that works for me.
Okay. Looks like we lost Yang. He may have had to head to another meeting. But at our next agenda meeting, which we have on Monday, I wrote myself a note and we'll bring it up and talk about it. See if we can bring that forward. Other topics that people have. Okay, I just want to say that I really appreciate how much attention everybody spends and how interested everybody is in everything that we do. So I just wanted to say that as a appreciation comment. So so that's all we have this evening, and we need a motion to adjourn. So whose turn? Who wants to adjourn? Oh, Harold and Alder Miadzi. So we have a motion and a second, and a couple of thirds and fourths there. So I'm going to assume a unanimous consent vote. And thanks so much, everybody. Take care. Bye.